So I just want to talk a little bit about this young lady. Her name's Jessica Hire. She is a former student sex worker, and she's recently started a charity called Support for Student Sex Workers. And this is after experiencing isolation and suicidal thoughts from being forced into sex work, and then also being turned away from mental health services. So the aim of the charity is basically to reduce the stigma around sex work and also to give professional support to those who are working in the industry. Now, sex work in the UK is actually on the rise, with more people struggling to make ends meet during the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. While it's not illegal for an individual to buy or sell sex from each other in the UK, soliciting and sex workers banding together as a group is illegal. So last year, a human rights charity, they did a study, and they're called Rights Info. They found that actually 49% of British people were in favour of decriminalising brothel keeping. So my question to you ladies is, do you think sex work in the UK should be decriminalised, and why?
This is a juicy one, guys. So I think whether people want to keep it a criminal offence for like brothel keeping and soliciting, or whether they want to decriminalise it, really comes down to a lot of people's personal opinion surrounding sex work. Because I think that's what is influencing, because people said there were stigmas. And I saw this really great quote on Open Society's Foundation, and it really spoke to me. It said, "The fact that sex work is work does not mean that it's good work, empowering work, or harmless work." And that really spoke to me, because I would say personally, in terms of sex work, I'm not really here for it. Like, I think that personally the body is sacred, and selling your body or selling your services to guys, it's just not something that I'm really, that I would do. Let me speak for myself. But I do think that sex work should be decriminalised, because for women who do make that choice, they should not be put in harm's way. That women who do sex work people who do sex work, because it's men, women, trans people, they are 12 times more likely to die because of the work that they do. When they say brothel keeping, the law is so vague around it. It can be literally two people working together. So one woman looking out for another woman, and they're both sex workers, that's a brothel. They could go to prison for years and years and years and years. And I think we need to start making it safer for women. And if that means classing it as work and giving them rights so that they can report things to the police and not face the stigma and access health services, then I'm all for it, apart from what my personal opinion might be on it.
I definitely agree with you in terms of, like, I think we have the same issues with it, because my biggest problem is that the criminalisation of sex work in the UK is such a legal grey area. And when people, when especially women, when they try to put things in place for their safety, it actually turns out that they're breaking the law. So going back to the brothel thing, because you could have women who team up to keep each other safe, but if there's more than one person in a household selling sex, that is considered a brothel by law, and then it's illegal. And so you're putting yourself in danger. But I think that if we were to decriminalise sex work, I think it would actually make it easier to keep people safe, because obviously these laws originally were designed to help people in theory, but in practice it's actually doing the opposite thing. So, like, for example, if you have women who want to report robbery or want to report sexual assault, 9 times out of 10, if they're a sex worker, they're not going to do it because they're scared of being arrested themselves. When I read the story of the student, like, it genuinely broke my heart. Like, I was genuinely so upset reading the article and watching the video on her, because there was a period of her life where she was forced to do this. She didn't want to do it. This was without consent. She went for help. She said that she was severely depressed, and she went to mental health institutions for help. She told them, "I'm about to go home and sleep with a man for money, and I don't want to do it." And she said she told them that she was suicidal. Because she was a sex worker, she was discharged from 2 therapists, and I think that is so wrong. I think that should be illegal. You can't just hear that someone's being abused or hear that someone's suicidal and let them go. So I think it truly is a miracle that she's still alive today and still able to turn her trauma into something positive for other sex workers, because I think again, like you said, Sophie, a lot of people's opinions on it comes down to how they view sex work. So if you had a child, if you had a girl, a student who said, I'm about to go home and be sexually assaulted by a person and there was no money involved, you'd absolutely step in to help her. If you had a student who said, I'm suicidal, you'd absolutely step in to help them. But because they knew that she was a sex worker, she was treated like less of a person. And I think this dehumanization of sex workers is what perpetrates so much sexual assault and so much murder. And I think we really need to take like a big step back as a society and listen to what sex workers are telling us will make them safer.
Yeah. I agree with you, girl.
Yeah, I agree. And I like you guys have both said, I share the sentiment in it's almost hard to speak on this without my personal opinion, because personally I would never
sex is so personal. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so personal.
It's so intimate. And so for me it's like I would never encourage someone to be a sex worker. Like, I just wouldn't. If my friend said, hey girl, this is what I'm about to go do, whoop-de-whoop-de-woo, I wouldn't be like, yeah girl, go do that. You know, seriously. I wouldn't be like, yeah, you should go and do that. I 100% would be like, why would you be doing this? Just for me, it's just not for me. However, I am here though for women, men, anyone being able to work in a safe space and not being put at threat or at harm and things like that. And when I was reading, I read quite interestingly about the Nordic model. So what they do basically is that they're, instead of criminalizing or, you know, persecuting the sex worker, it's really their client, or possibly, for lack of better words, their pimp who gets criminalized or who gets persecuted. And of course that comes with its pros and cons. One, that the sex worker doesn't get stigmatized, so that's the pro. But the con is, if you are now persecuting their clients or their pimp, then that means that they have like a shortage of income. So I always feel like there's no way to win in anything with the sex work, because it's all so great, like you were saying, Luanda.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the Nordic model, it's actually been shown not to work. So they introduced it in Ireland, Sweden, Canada, and in all of those countries, they were saying it actually didn't make sex workers safer. That's what sex workers said, because they're saying the clients usually become more violent because they know now a sex worker can put them in a vulnerable position to get them arrested or whatever. Even if they're not going to, the fear is there, and then the clients take it out on the sex workers. Whereas in New Zealand, where they decriminalise sex work or various things like soliciting or brothel keeping around sex work, because like you said, it is legal to be able to trade sex on an individual basis for money. They're saying when they did it in New Zealand, the sex workers said it had a positive impact because they felt now they could refuse clients. Because the law was behind them. They could insist that clients wear condoms because they now had the law behind them. And they said they had better relationships with the police and felt that they could talk about instances where they had been assaulted, because now they were no longer seen as somebody to throw in prison, but someone who the law is now saying that you protect. So that's why I think it's so important that we really revisit this and take our personal opinions out of it, because why aren't we looking at the laws in the UK that have made it so difficult to live that some women feel that their only option is to sell their body or sell their sexual services in order to make money. They said there are a lot of mothers who are now doing it because times have gotten so hard due to the austerity government and now the pandemic. We don't want to tackle that. We don't want to tackle poverty, but we want to tell them, we're going to throw you in prison if two of you are working together to keep safe.
Right. Wow, well done to New Zealand, first of all. And I read an article that said something along the lines of, there shouldn't be a government that dictates between two consenting adults who they should have sex with and on what terms. And I found it really funny when I read it, but it's also really, really true. And I think that if we were to decriminalise sex work, it would make it easier to find children, because imagine if you are in like a brothel situation and it's illegal for you to be in that situation anyway, and then they bring in a new girl in the room next to you and she looks 17, and maybe you find out that she is, and you can't say anything because they're going to ask you, how do you know this, what's the address, and then you're also going to jail. So I think that like the most important thing for me is to protect kids and to protect people who aren't consenting, people who are involved in the sex work against their will, which is the most horrific thing I could ever think of. And in terms of the police, because you mentioned about them having better relationships with the police, Sophie, there have been a lot of cases of abuse where the police either like force them to have sex with them so that they won't get arrested, or confiscate their assets, so they actually legally are able to take their earnings. So you could go to jail and have your money legally taken from you, and there are no reports to where this money goes. And a lot of the times they presume that the like, sometimes there's immigrant women that get arrested for prostitution, their money that has been confiscated then is put towards deporting them to countries that aren't safe. That is crazy.
Madness.
That is absolutely
horrible.
wild. Also, Sophie, you said something about condoms, and I read a couple of things which really confused my brain, because there was one website that I was on, which was a website that was for the protection of prostitutions. And they talked about, don't make it easy for the police, don't carry condoms, and don't carry your work clothes. And then I read another article that said there was a prosecutor who actually was able to move the case forward by proving that this woman was a sex worker because she was in possession of condoms. And so since then, a lot of sex workers have been too scared to carry them and have, of course, been contracting STIs. But in my mind, if you pull me over and you think that I'm a sex worker and I have like lingerie and condoms in my car, how does that prove anything? Because in my head, smart people carry condoms anyway, and if you
well, maybe it's how many, but I think
met them.
Well, exactly, because they could have chatted them up and then they have this. But I guess my thing is with the condoms, I think it brings it to a really good position in terms of health, and that by decriminalizing it, you allow women, trans people, men enabled to be able to have better health, and they're saying that when you bring in these laws to support sex workers and the work that they do, HIV and AIDS goes down, because the World Health Organization said in 2012 we should be making laws to put sex work as work, because they're like, it actually decreases disease and STDs and HIV and AIDS,
murders and sexual assaults
and murders, because you're saying if women are not carrying condoms and they're sleeping with a few men, or men are not carrying condoms and they're sleeping with a few clients through the night, and you don't know how many other people these clients have slept with, we're saying that that's less of a risk than two women. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I know this is actually hard to say, but it actually trips me out. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, if I was going to get a prostitute, I would bring protection with me anyway, because I know that I'm sleeping with a prostitute. And
look, I'm sorry, some men are reckless out there.
That's true.
Look, Anissa, what's the difference between a man going to sleep with a sex worker without a condom and men who link up with people on Tinder and don't want to use a condom either? Like, I think for some people, they're just like, I want to ride this horse bareback into the wind, regardless.
These kind of people are reckless, and these are the people that you don't need to be like so reckless like that. This is crazy. But I didn't want to focus too much on the condom thing. It was just a fleeting thought, like, I can't believe it. Because for me, I don't even feel like it should be.
I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that, guys. I'm so sorry.
This has been the best moment for me. Out of all the shows that we've done, is Sophie saying riding the horse bareback into the wind. That's my favourite 10 out of 10. Must watch. Please come again.
Oh gosh, we need to do like a bloopers reel. But I think is,
yeah.
I would say about the sex work, I read an article and it was saying that a lot of women get involved, because I don't want to again come from the sex work angle, because they said a lot of women, or many women who do it because of poverty. Some women do it because they're saying it's better pay, fewer hours, more flexibility, and some women or people do it because it says it helps them to express themselves sexually. So there are a variety of people, because I don't want us to paint the one image that they're all destitute migrant immigrants who have no other way to kind of live their life.
Yeah.
It is a very, very vast pool of people.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like,
Anissa's not buying it.
Yeah, it's just really tough for me, because it's really tough for me. It's really tough. The bottom line for me is I just hope everybody is safe and stays safe.
100%.
That is the bottom line.